Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to episode 77 of the BJJ Brick Podcast. I'm Gary, and I'm here with Byron. How are you doing, Byron?
Hello, Gary. I am doing great.
Awesome.
Excited.
We've got another great show for you this week. We've got part 2 of our interview with Ricardo. I know you probably all tuned into it last week. Ricardo from Jiu-Jitology. I have trouble saying that word. Jiu-Jitology. He's here for part 2, and he's going to have some more great advice for us.
Absolutely. If you caught the first episode, great, and welcome to this one. If you downloaded this one and did not check out the first one, that's fine. We're just talking about jiu-jitsu, and you should be able to follow along just fine, but you're going to want to go back and listen to the first one if you missed it. Trust me on that.
And hey, I think I actually gave some wrong information about Ricardo last week. I did say he was getting his master's degree in psychology, I guess, but I saw on Facebook he just defended his thesis, so I think I was incorrect, way incorrect. I think he's getting his doctorate degree, so congratulations there, Ricardo.
That is awesome, and that should be a bit of a less workload for him once that's over with, so he'll be imagine hitting the mats more and hopefully doing more stuff with his website there. Speaking of that, Jiu-Jitology will have a clothing line available on their website. Swing by, check that out. It's probably already up by the time you're hearing this. And check out the show notes or the website to get a coupon code for 10% off. I will add that to the notes as soon as it becomes available. Let's get to our quote of the week.
What do we got this week, Byron?
We've got a quote that my wife recommended to me.
Sweet.
So this is coming from her. Following the path of least resistance makes rivers and men crooked.
I like that because jiu-jitsu definitely can make a man crooked. Crooked legs, crooked limbs, crooked neck.
That's funny. It can crack you up a little bit there. And this isn't necessarily a podcast about rivers, so of course, the path of least resistance is how water is going to flow, and you can do the whole Bruce Lee thing. But, jiu-jitsu is not an easy road. It's going to help develop some character, especially with kids coming in. It's a great character development tool to use, and they're going to grow up, and they're going to have worked hard for every belt that they've attained, and in their development on the mats. No easy road for a kid or an adult. I think it really does a lot of good for the person that is training. Yeah,
and I think that you just think about when you're training, you can take the path of least resistance, or light drilling, 3 or 4 jumping jacks, a push-up or 2, or you can go hard. You can train harder. You can do some burpees afterwards. You can lift some weights. You can, do some live wrestling, positional sparring 100%. It's, like you said, it's not an easy sport. You got to train hard, train smart, train efficiently to get the best results.
The hard training, it pays off in areas other than just jiu-jitsu. You're going to have that discipline to come in and work past when you're tired and when you don't want to work hard anymore. If you're able to get past that point, off the mat, you're ready to go. You're in business. You've already done something difficult and accomplished that. Anything off the mat is going to be a lot easier for you. And that comes to doing the right thing. Like when I think of a man who's crooked or a person who's crooked, it's somebody who is not trustworthy. They might be trying to take advantage of you. Somebody that you don't want to associate with. They're looking for the path of least resistance. They're looking to swindle you out of a few bucks or whatever they might be doing. That's not what you're going to find in jiu-jitsu, generally speaking.
Yeah, it's just like in high school. You didn't want to study, so you cheated. You wrote the answers down on your hand or a piece of paper. You took the path of least resistance. But I kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about helping you in life. And I've said this so many times ever since I started training jiu-jitsu, and we've been training, about 13 years, Byron? Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. But all that time I've been training, I've got so much more confidence in myself. And it's not just because I know I can defend myself, or in my job I don't need to defend myself, but I've got confidence because of all the hard times I've spent on the mat, because all the times I didn't take the path of least resistance, because all the time I was getting smashed and beat up and wanted to quit, but I didn't. It has really made me, every time I think that work is stressful or I've got something going on at work, I just tell myself, it's like, man, this is nothing like being buried under Byron's side mount or something of that sort. And I'm like, man, this is cake compared to just getting beat up on the mat. So jiu-jitsu has definitely helped me become a better person.
Yeah, to me, in the back of your mind, you know you could work hard, and you know that working hard gets really good results. And when you're faced with like a situation off the mat, when there's an easy way and it's kind of cutting some corners, it's not quite doing the right thing, but it's good enough, or there's the right way, and it's going to be a little harder, and it's going to take a little more time, but it's going to get the job done correctly, you're more likely to choose the right way, just from that confidence you've built yourself by training jiu-jitsu or any sport that is difficult and puts you through some hard times.
Well said, Byron.
Speaking of the crooked rivers, Gary, might as well.
I wonder where you're going with this.
you ever done any rafting, whitewater rafting, anything like that?
I never have. I've been canoeing, but not whitewater canoeing.
Canoeing.
Yes.
Were you fishing, or what were you doing as you canoe?
Just canoeing.
Just canoe.
Back where I'm from, upstate New York, there's a lot of canoeing going on there. Here we don't have enough water in most places to canoe.
That's true. And when we do, see the local river here in Wichita, you don't want to eat fish out of, and if you swim in it, you probably need to go get a shot. That's pretty common to have happen. But you go over to Colorado, they have some really cool rivers to raft in, definitely. And it could be a lot of fun. I recommend it, Gary.
I'll have to try it.
Get you a nice class 4 or 5 rapids there.
Oh, I want to take the path of least resistance. I'm going for a class 1.
Class 1. The boat does take its own path. Yeah, I think that's the easiest one. Yeah. There may be a 0, but that'd be probably staying in the car.
Well, I'm going to do a class 1, but I'm going to make it a little harder without a life raft, without a life preserver. There we go. I'm just going to use floaties.
The class 1 takes place in the bathtub, so just wear one of your floaties like you usually do, Gary.
Yeah.
Gary, for article of the week, we're actually going to change things up a little bit this week. What do you think about that?
Oh, great. Now that I was all ready for the article of the week and you changed it on me, let's see if I can recover.
I bet you will. I bet you'll do fine. We've got a question of the week from our friend John. He went to a tournament with his son, who is 14, and his son was out there competing, doing his thing, and the other coach was like really vocal and loud and like yelling detailed instructions about what the other kids should be doing, and it just seemed like it was a negative experience that he got from that, and he just wanted to know. He asked a little bit what's up with that, and it's like that's the way it is in BJJ. Get used to it. And he wanted to know, are there standards in coaching for BJJ and kind of what's going on with that and what could he expect? So, Gary, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, are there standards? I don't think there are. Does IBJJF say anything about that? Or
they have some rules about coaching, but as far as telling your athlete what to do or anything like that, okay. I don't think there's any regulation about that.
Yeah, I can see the pros and cons of both, the step-by-step instructions or just going out there and, giving minimal instructions or just concepts. But I'm not a big fan of step-by-step instructions either. But I do like it when I hear the other coach giving the step-by-step instructions. It's like I'll do the opposite. It's like, hey, thanks for telling me what your guy's going to do. I kind of like that.
Yeah, like, go for Gary's right arm. Okay, Gary's going to be ready for that,
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like, to me, it works in my advantage.
Yeah, just a little bit, about how I think I like to coach, and it may be practices may be different than when I actually do it, but just sitting here thinking about how I like to coach, it's way easier if you know the person that you're coaching, and you spend a lot of that time with them. So I like to tell them, like, if I know they have a really good head and arm triangle from side control, I might remind them of that, but I'm not going to say that specifically. I'll say, hey, look for your choke, or tell them to play to their game. I don't want to tell them to secure that arm and keep the pressure on the back of their arm with their head to not let them escape. That's too much for me as far as details goes. But I like to remind them of their game. A lot of times with people competing is they need like a little bit of confidence. So just to kind of encourage them, like you've been here before, especially if they're in a bad spot. You know how to get out. You just start doing our escapes. You can get out of this, and I think that's a real good way to coach. I've competed with just my wife coaching me from the sidelines, and she was I think probably a no belt at the time, and I just told her to let me know of the time. Let me know of the score if I happen to make eye contact with her or I look like I was looking for the score, and just a little bit of general encouragement. And that worked out okay. It's she wasn't going to give me any great advice and see something coming my way that I wasn't able to see coming. But it's nice to know the time and nice to know how you're doing, and it's nice to have somebody rooting for you. So. Yeah,
and see, I've done that too with my buddy Craig. He really didn't know a lot about jiu-jitsu one time when he was in my corner. It was just him, and it was more, hey, tell me how much time's left and tell me to breathe. And really, that's all I wanted. It's like I think if you've been training enough, a lot of the stuff is just going to come natural. And then even if you haven't been training enough, I think sometimes just like what you were saying, just the confidence, somebody who believes in you.
Yeah. We interviewed Ostap on episode 33, and I had to search for this because I knew somebody said something about remote control coaching, and that so he'll talk about that in that episode. And I never heard that term before, remote control, like you're just moving the buttons on the person that's out there, and so suddenly you have a player that's competing with instruction from somebody else. That's a little bit different, and like you said, you've competed against people like that, as have I, and you try to listen to that and go by that as well and listen to what they'll do. Some people don't listen to their coach at all, so it may not be helping them at all. But just keep that in mind that if you are yelling out detailed instructions, the opponent should be listening for that as well as your student. To me, it shows a lack of confidence sometimes in what the student's doing. If I need to help them coach through something, sometimes if they're stuck in something and I could tell they're confused by what's going on, then I might. That's I think the most likely time that I will give. Okay, with your right arm, you need to grab his foot and create some space or something like that. But other than that, I let them fight their fight. They're out there to learn and hopefully win. But there's much more going on than just the win or the loss. So. Hopefully our training before here got him or her to a place where they're going to be able to do their best without a lot of help from me or any other coach.
Yeah, and I liked the question we got where he was talking about he's trained in other martial arts. And this, I guess, was the first jiu-jitsu tournament, and he was kind of confused with all the, as you call it, or as Ostap called it, robo-coaching, remote control coaching, I'm sorry. Where he was saying in his martial arts that they've trained before, they let their student go out there and just train. They have the confidence in their practicing, during practice, going over everything, that they will be able to go out there onto the mat and do what they've trained, what they've practiced. And then afterwards, they'll sit after the match is over and talk about what they did well, what they did wrong, what they could improve on, and I thought that was a pretty cool way to do it there.
Yeah, I wish that more people would do this, but when you go to a tournament, there's going to be some remote control coaching going on.
There's going to be a lot of it.
Yeah, I guess you could do a little bit of that at the gym. That way you have two competitors like sparring at the gym. Well, remote control coach one of them and see how they both react, and let them know that this time I'm going to be helping you, next time I'll help this other person, and you both need to be listening to what I'm saying and hopefully react well to that and make it difficult for the guy who's doing the move that's listening well. But it is part of jiu-jitsu is to be able to listen to your corner and to take a little bit of advice. It's there's obviously that step where you go way over a line and you're trying to compete for them and you're telling them everything they should do. That's too much, I think.
Yes, yep, I agree with you there. But yeah, there's a fine line of coaching. No two people are exactly alike. So that's what I liked what you said a little bit earlier. you really got to know the person you're coaching. Some people may need one thing, another person may need another thing, and that's up to you as the instructor, as the coach, to get to know your people, find out what works best for them, and that's the key, what works best for them.
Absolutely. You got to learn, the more you know about your students and the more they know about themselves, the better they're going to do. The last part of his email that he wrote, he had a recommendation for the most interesting jiu-jitsu, the most interesting grappler. That. And I'll read it here because it's really funny, and I want to give him credit for it, but I haven't yet put it into the system as far as on the next one or anything like that. But the most interesting man, once his De La Riva was so strong that his opponent's mom fell over. So you'll be hearing that soon, I think, and I just want to get that out. Thank you for contributing that, and that's really good, man. And
if anybody can come up with something, email it to us. Let us know. Send it to us at our Facebook page or bjjbrick@gmail.com.
Gary, before we transition to the Jiu-Jitology interview part 2, I got to mention our weekly newsletter we send out on Tuesdays. It comes out Tuesday morning automatically. It's so nice. It does it automatically because I don't remember.
I will have to say there's 3 or 4 people I work with that get it every Tuesday, and they're always kind of excited. And what I thought was kind of neat is I was sitting on my porch outside my house Tuesday night, and one of my buddies there came over to visit me. And actually, we were going to train, so he was coming over to visit and train. But as he was pulling into my driveway, the window was down on his truck, and all I could hear was Ricardo's voice.
Oh,
he was listening to the podcast on the way over, pretty loud, and I thought it was pretty cool.
So were the people next to him in the intersection, huh?
Yeah, hopefully they learned some stuff too.
You could sign up for the newsletter on the website. There's a little form to put your name and email, or you can go to the Facebook page and put your name and email in there, and we'll send out the newsletter every Tuesday. The good thing about the newsletter is it's got all the show notes from from the show from Monday, and at the very bottom of it, there's a little folder to a Dropbox, a little link to a Dropbox folder, which is just like a folder for your computer, basically. And it's got some stuff in there for you, my friends. Guess what we have in there now, Gary? I've upped it.
What do we got? So
I'm working on this little audiobook that eventually we hope to be able to sell here. We've had in there before, this audiobook is called Your First Year of BJJ. And the first chapter is finding the right gym for you, and then we have your first month of BJJ, benefits of BJJ. 2 new chapters here that I just put up recently are techniques and positions to focus on.
Sweet.
That'll be specifically for your first year, and then your training schedule during your first year of training. So those, and then we've got I think 3 or 4 more other little audiobooks in there. So it's getting kind of full in there. It's kind of nice. Did another thing, Gary, for this little folder that we have. At the in the big studio here.
It is a big studio.
It's about the size of a bedroom. There's a whiteboard hanging on the wall that has like our schedule of upcoming events. You know what I'm talking about, Gary?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
We look at it all the time. Well, I took a picture of this and I put it in the Dropbox folder. So if you want to know, like we've got several episodes ready to go. If you want to know what's coming up next, check out the picture. I called it whiteboard, and it'll have the up-and-coming episodes. I'll try to update this on a regular basis of what's coming up. So just a little heads up for you there.
Oh, that's cool. I like that idea.
Yeah, we'll see if it backfires somehow, but a little inside information for the people who are signed up on the email list.
It won't backfire unless I thought of the idea. I think you're in good shape.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, we'll see. But so far, it's harmed nobody. So, anyway,
yeah, there you go.
If you've got an old one of their old email lists emails in your email account, just click on that link. It should be updated every time. So, whatever. Gary, let's not waste any more time and get to the interview with Ricardo from Jiu-Jitology. What do you think about that, buddy?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
When he does a sweep, the mat actually gets a little cleaner. In a friendly game of basketball, he once scored 2 points for a takedown. If he invites someone to BJJ class, they actually show up. One of his cauliflower ears was eaten by a vegetarian.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Go for the submission, my friends.
It was, really interesting that you bring that up about how people take time off for injury and they come back, and it's almost like sometimes they come back stronger than before. And on another note, I've actually been thinking about this a little bit as far as coming back stronger. I think. Yeah. So sorry, I'm about to go down a little wormhole here, a rabbit hole here. But one of the things that I've been studying recently is about how to train more effectively and how to train more without all of the injury and without all of the wear and tear on my body. And so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and when I say I listen to a lot of podcasts, I really listen to the same 5 over and over again. And so these are all Tim Ferriss podcasts. And he does a couple of really cool podcasts, one with Pablo Tatsulin, who is otherwise known as the father of the kettlebell. And another one that I listen to a lot is one with Josh Waitzkin. And so they both kind of tie into the Pablo Tatsulin podcast was the first one that I listened to, and he has a really interesting approach to strength. And so basically he says the best way to build strength is to say you can only do a deadlift 6 times. Do it only 3 times. And just do multiple sets, but make sure that you're really, really well rested between each set. So in other words, give yourself about 15 minutes between sets. He says if you do this, eventually you will get a lot stronger. And one of the reasons is because your muscles don't fatigue. And so he says one of the biggest problems with American, and I'm paraphrasing this, if I get it wrong, forgive me, but one of the biggest problems with Americans is that they tend to train to fatigue. And so we have this idea that we should be trained to fatigue all the time. And so in order to get any sort of workout in, we need to put in 2 hours. We need to, exhaust ourselves beyond all recognition, and that'll help us grow. And so his argument, in my opinion, would be that's not the way to do this, because when you do that, you're basically releasing all sorts of toxins into your muscles and into your body. And so training for 2 hours, all you're doing is putting dysfunction on top of fitness, and that puts, that's to use his words. And so segue over to Josh Waitzkin's podcast. And so basically he talks about how his creative spurts, and so how one of the best ways to maintain creativity is to, as Hemingway said, to stop writing mid-sentence. And so what he does is if he has a creative burst, he does not write it out into fatigue. He stops it midway. That way the entire, his brain can keep on going with creativity throughout the day. And so then I started thinking, well, how many times have I or anybody else had a creative burst and they wrote it out to fatigue, right? So I have this idea. I spend 2 hours writing. All of a sudden I'm exhausted. I no longer want anything to do with anything creative for the rest of the day. I turn on the TV. I do mind-numbing things that kind of keep my brain back to where it needs to be. So the whole idea here is that the brain, just like the body, is a muscle. And so in order to maximize creativity, you cannot take it to fatigue. And so I started taking this concept with my own jiu-jitsu training. So I stopped over the last month. I have been training no more than moderate. I have been not exhausting myself. I've been, we have days where there's 2-hour training sessions, and I call it after an hour. And I try my best not to fatigue myself. So once I start feeling fatigued, I'll stop. The end result is over the last month, I have added 3 hours worth of weight training, including an extra hour worth of running and an extra 5 to 6 hours worth of actual mat time where I'm on the mats training, and I feel no more fatigue. I actually feel better than I ever have before. And so it's a really, really interesting concept that I've kind of been working on quite a bit in terms of keeping things fresh. And so when people, this is, I guess, one of the hypotheses that you can test about somebody taking time off of injury is when they come back from an injury. I think what's going on is not so much a lot of it's mental, but I also think what people are doing is giving their bodies a chance to relax and recover. And I think that recovery is something that people don't really take too seriously. Our body needs to recover. And so as a rule, I don't train on Wednesdays. And so people ask me if I'm going to train, on Wednesday. I said, no, I don't train on Wednesday. Just by rule, I do not train on Wednesdays. I need a day off where my body can just do nothing. I can kind of spend time with my girlfriend. I can spend time with my dogs. I can spend time at home doing nothing, maybe do some writing. But I don't train. And so the idea is to just give my body some extra time to relax, get back on point. And I've also noticed that my game, both physically and mentally, when I'm actually rolling with people, I'm a lot more on point than I was when I used to train to fatigue all the time. So it'd be interesting. I'm only a purple belt right now, so I don't have much clout in terms of how people should train jiu-jitsu. But it's been an interesting journey in terms of the last month and how it's helped me out. And so I'm interested in seeing if it would help other people out in the event that they're able to train like this.
Yeah, that is a very interesting concept. And don't sell yourself short being a purple belt. I mean, purple belt has tons of skill in jiu-jitsu, and your unique perspective on how training works and how your mind works is giving you some insight that a lot of high-level black belts don't realize or don't consider. So
right.
It's very interesting concepts, and I'll have to try to figure out. I usually will roll till I'm pretty tired, and I wonder if I'm doing myself a little disservice.
Well, I can tell you from myself, Byron will tell you, I'm the last guy on the mat all the time. I'm always trying to maximize. I roll myself into oblivion. But I'm also 48 years old. And here in the last 3 or 4 months, I've cut down to 3 days a week, and on the other days, going to the YMCA and doing other stuff. And I'm feeling great right now. I really have. And I kind of think of what you're saying. I'm cutting down. Byron and I rolled before our interview here, and we didn't go too crazy. We kind of kept the pace down a little bit and had fun, and it's really worked for me. And just listening to your unique perspectives, I tell you, the one thing that I'm going to start doing is I'm going to do the 5-minute meditation. You know, the breathing, and I think that's going to do wonders for me, not just on the mat, but in my personal life, at my job. I'm kind of excited to start that, try that out.
Oh, it's incredible. It's been a life changer for sure. It's really been helpful. I'll actually be happy to send y'all my independent study project. Probably won't be done until about May, but I'll be happy to send y'all the final document. It basically just kind of goes into all the neurobiological changes, cognitive changes, structural, functional, all this other stuff in the brain as a result of meditation. And a lot of it has to do with the attention regulation, how we, what our focus goes into. And so really neat stuff. So
I'm guessing most listeners here have not done that 5-minute meditation ever. So could you kind of walk us through it? So I'm going to sit down in a comfortable spot maybe. Do I set a timer for 5 minutes or just go about 5 minutes?
I think this is going to vary on an individual level. I think the correct way to do it is to sit in a room or sit somewhere. I guess they call it crisscross applesauce now. So with your legs crossed, basically.
The PC term.
So I have I'm 32 years old. So back when I was in elementary school, we said Indian style. So I teach a kids class on Fridays, and so I tell them, sometimes to sit down Indian style, and sometimes the kids will point out, it's crisscross applesauce now. We're not supposed to. So yeah, I guess crisscross applesauce. You go and sit down on the floor. Your back upright. Good posture. Getting posture is really important. And just breathe. Just breathe in and out. And so my prescription, especially for people that have never meditated before, in terms of how people should be breathing, I say, just breathe and breathe and breathe through your nose until your lungs are at capacity. In other words, until they start to feel uncomfortable. And then slowly control it, exhale it out until, again, your lungs start to become uncomfortable. Hold it for a second and breathe back in. And so if you sit down upright for a while, especially if you're not used to sitting or if you don't have really good posture, your back can start hurting for a little while. So I know Tim Ferriss, he says that he actually sits against the wall, which I guess in some circles is a no-no, as he says. But if I don't get a chance to sit in the middle of a room and do this, what I'll do is I'll put out a warm bath, and I'll kind of just lay in a hot bath while I kind of just control my breathing and focus it. So I do find better results when I am just sitting down upright, in a room and just focusing my breath. And it's almost like after you're done, it almost feels like it's kind of high, it's kind of like this euphoric feeling where everything has kind of just been lifted. And it's a really interesting feeling if you actually do take it. Now, as far as time goes, time is relative, right? So it's recommended that you do even longer. But most people, especially, people like me that are always on the go, they always have something to be doing, 5 minutes can seem like an eternity. So what I recommend is set a timer for 5 minutes, so just to get an idea of how long 5 minutes is, I try, when I have a tournament coming up, I'll actually do it for 15 minutes at a time. And so I try to at least do 5 minutes throughout my life, but when I have something really huge like a tournament coming, then I'll start to do 15 minutes at least every other day, just so I can kind of get into this disciplinary, control my breathing, just focus, become Zen, one with the world, ultra competitor, right? So that's really what I recommend. Just try to control your breathing, breathe in, breathe out, set a timer for about 5 minutes. If you want to go longer, cool. If not, no worries. I think the most important thing though is that a lot of times, again, 5 minutes can seem like an eternity, especially when you have a lot of anxiety. And so the best part is not to judge yourself. And so there's actually, in the literature about mindful meditation, it's called non-judgmental, attentional centered breathing. And the whole thing behind non-judgmental is if you do start thinking about your shopping list, if you do start thinking about the things you need to do today, don't get pissed off about them. Understand them, accept them, and then bring it back to your breathing. So in other words, when you start thinking about the third place medal you got when you should have gotten first, rather than get pissed off and walk away and watch TV, just accept it and say, okay, I was just thinking about the third place medal I got. Now let's bring it back to my breath. So just understand where your mind's going and then bringing it back to your breathing. And I think that is a huge thing. I think a lot of people, what ends up happening is when they try to meditate, they get pissed off about something that they're thinking about that they shouldn't be thinking about when they should just be relaxing. And so, interestingly enough, I do, so I run a Sundays class. And it used to be just a gi competition class, and it started turning into a no-gi and wrestling class. And now it's still a no-gi class. So I'm doing a no-gi class on Sundays. And one of the things that I like to do with my students, and sometimes they don't even like it, but I make them do it anyway, is we do 5-minute rounds, and then I make them do 5 minutes of meditation. And so 5-minute round after their round. And what I do is I tell them no submissions. What they're going to do is just go for transitions. That they're not allowed to hang out in any position for longer than 3 seconds, which is basically long enough to get your points, right? So I tell them, if your training partner stalls for 4 seconds, tap them and tell them to keep on moving. And so I will do my best. The whole idea here is that you have to learn how to transition and learn how to move. The end result is, as people don't understand, they're super tired. They get gassed out really easy because most people, when they're tired, they try to hold you down and not move so they can catch their breath. If you keep on moving, you can't catch your breath, and so they just get really exhausted. And after 5 minutes, a 5-minute round makes it feel like they just did a 10-minute regular round. And so what I'll tell them is just lay on your back, hands flat, don't scratch your face, don't wipe the sweat from your brow, don't fix your gi, don't tie your belt, don't fix your shorts, just relax. If something is bothering you, then think about it. Why is it bothering you? Try to get past it, try to breathe through it, and eventually the sweat will just dry off, right? And so don't worry about any of that. And so I'll make them do 5-minute round and 5 minutes of meditation, and 5 minutes around, 5 minutes of meditation. And then the end result is after a 2-hour sparring session, most of them feel relaxed and comfortable, and they're ready to go about their day as if they had all the energy in the world. And so it's actually a really cool practice that I like to do myself, is just kind of meditate between rounds. When, of course, when I lead them, when my professor leads them, then it's usually 30 seconds of rest, and you're on to the next 6-minute round. So a little more intense.
That's a cool concept. I'm picturing people around the world that are listening to this and thinking about, well, maybe I'll give that a try. It seems like oftentimes you have an odd number of students in the classroom, and if you're odd person out, pick a corner, get out of the way, and try some meditation there before you get back at it. That might be a way to kind of sneak it in without having to change the whole structure of the class. As just a student.
That's something that I do as well. So I don't, when my professor or whenever their professor runs the class, I don't get a chance to do this practice.
Yeah.
So what I do as a personal thing for me, so I usually after a match, your professor is going to ask if you want water, right? And so that gives you an extra minute before the next round is announced. And so rather than go get water, what I do is I make sure my gi and my belt are tied first and foremost after every single match. I think there's a huge psychological component to that too, is after every sparring session, the first thing I do is fix my gi and tie my belt before I get off the mat, basically to me that shows myself and my opponent that I am fine. I am okay. He did not gas me out. No matter how bad I'm feeling inside, I will never show weakness outside. Does that make sense? So I'm always going to tie my belt, fix my gi, and then I walk right back to the line. I don't get water. I walk right back to the line. I kind of just get on my knees. I close my eyes, and I just kind of breathe in and breathe out and breathe in. And what I'm doing is I'm paying attention to my heart rate. And what I'm trying to do is get my heart rate to go from unsteady to steady to calm. And usually, I've gotten to a point where now I can kind of stabilize my heart rate and bring it back to, relatively resting little stimulated, of course, but relatively resting before the next match is called. And so I tell people, I was like, I don't get water because to me, my heart rate, how I'm breathing is more important. I can always hydrate after the class, but my heart rate during the match, that's what's important to me. That's what's going to build mental toughness. That's what's going to build the mental stamina when my body starts to fail, is that my mind's ability to tell myself, hey, just keep going. It's okay. You're good. Just tie your belt. Everything's fine. Don't give people the satisfaction of knowing that they just worked you. So that's my practice. Whenever you don't have a chance to really meditate between rounds, I kind of just, rather than the water break, I just go right back to a point on the mat where I can just close my eyes, breathe deep, and get my heart rate back into a good position, good rhythm.
Yeah. Man, that's another very interesting concept. I knew we were going to get some really cool stuff out of you today, that being able to control your heart rate is more important than your water. Like, I never thought of that ever as I've been training. It was water, yeah, that sounds good to me. I'm thirsty. Never taking time to relax. And in my free time, I'm joking around with other students, and I'm not calming down. If I was amped up, I've been able to calm down. So that's another great concept. I think a really good takeaway that people could take with them today or tomorrow when they're on the mat, that they could try to use immediately. And it's so hard, especially when you're a new student, to be able to calm yourself down and to train. And it takes me to competition. Like, what advice would you give to a student who is going to do their first tournament?
The biggest advice that I can give is the biggest advice I give to myself. So tournaments are very nerve-wracking, and I love to compete. And people think that because I do well in competitions, or because I love to compete, that I don't experience the pre-game jitters that everybody else does. I think sometimes people think that I'm a little superhuman. I'm like, anybody tells you that they're not nervous is lying. And if they're not lying, then they're not human. There's no, every single person there is anxiety, and you see this in the competitor spaces. You could always see, if you go to any competition, you see people. Some people are chatting with their friends, they're smiling, they're social. Other people are jumping up and down, listening to music. Other people are warming up. Everybody has their own way of getting ready for a tournament. And I think all of that is finding ways to get rid of the anxiety that they have for the tournament. So everybody experiences some sort of anxiety. The best advice that I can give to people, especially if it's your first competition, is the same advice I give to myself after who knows how many competitions I've done so far. And this comes from a Randy Couture quote that I read, and I think it was The Fighter's Mind or The Fighter's Heart by Sam Sheridan. Randy Couture said, if the worst thing that happens in my life is losing the fight, then I'm doing okay. And so every single time I compete, I say, you know what? If the worst thing that happens in my life is losing the tournament, then I have a pretty good life. And so that perspective, that ability to put things in such a way that, you know what, I have a beautiful life. My girlfriend is amazing. My dogs are awesome. I tend to think that I do pretty well in jiu-jitsu, for what I want out of it. I tend to think that my life is going really, really well. If losing the tournament's the worst thing that happens to me, man, I've got a lot more to think about. And so that is what I tell my students every single time they're getting pregame jitters, or every single time they're starting to put too much pressure on them. So, just go out there and have fun. It's like, if you love jiu-jitsu, and this is another thing that I tell myself, that I think the amateur competitor, or the person just starting to get in competitions, this is something else that I tell myself. I love jiu-jitsu. The reason why I compete is because I love jiu-jitsu so much that I go out there and I put my body on the line because it helps me learn more about jiu-jitsu. The only reason why I compete is not for the medals. I don't care about the medals. I don't care about the glory. I don't care about standing on top of the podium taking pictures. I don't care about sponsorships. What I care is the knowledge that I gain about myself and about jiu-jitsu. And so that has always been the driving point. It's kind of back to Fight Club, where Tyler Durden says to himself, how much can you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight, right? So to me, what I always tell my students is like, you know what, how much can you really know about yourself if you don't compete? How much do you really know about your jiu-jitsu if you don't go out there and compete? Even if it's apples to oranges and the guy hasn't had his blue belt for 5 years and you just got your blue belt last week, it doesn't matter. Go out there. You're going to learn something, whether about yourself, about jiu-jitsu, about anything. You're going to learn something. And I think learning is probably one of the most important things that we've got in life, is our ability to learn, acquire information and then apply it. And so competing, to me, I love jiu-jitsu so much that I want to go out there and put my body on the line, because I always learn more about myself and more about, the trade, the craft, the art. And so that's really important to me, is the knowledge gained from it.
Yeah, definitely. What would you think would be a good goal for a student in their first year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Just keep showing up. That is plain and simple. That is the best goal I think any beginner can have. Just keep showing up. Just show up. You know, if you, and I know it sounds a little bit oversimplified, like what, you know, having a goal of just showing up to class. You know, I tend to think that being consistent and trying to figure out what kind of, you know, so for example, we've all got stuff going on in our lives, and we all have different things that keep us from doing what we really want. So, but I tell people, you know, you have to start understanding what you really want out of life. If you really want to get better at jiu-jitsu, then you need to understand that, and you need to make decisions in your life to get better at jiu-jitsu. So if you are just starting out and you love jiu-jitsu, then you need to start making decisions to make sure you will continue with jiu-jitsu. And that starts obviously with goal setting. So start setting goals. Well, how many times do you want to train? Be realistic about them. Do you want to come in four times a week? And just keep, you know, part of that is just keep showing up. Show up the first time. Show up the second time. Show up the third time. Show up the fourth time. Show up the fifth time, and so on and so forth. And I think that having a goal of just showing up to class without making any excuses is probably one of the easiest and best things any beginner can do, is because, you know, showing up is half the battle. And knowledge is half the battle, including G.I. Joe. But showing up is 90% of life, as, you know, I think it was Woody. Maybe I'm getting my quotes confused, but just show up. That's your number one goal, is just show up.
Yeah, and they're definitely going to have days when they don't feel like showing up, but that might be a day that really pays off. And when you miss a day, you can easily miss two. When you miss two, you might miss the week. And if you're missing a week, you might not jiu-jitsu next week. Yeah.
You know, and that's something I tell a lot of new students too. That, you know, especially when they tell me, I know I'm about to get my blue belt in a few months, but I really need to take a week off. Listen, you take a week off, then it's going to be okay to take 2 weeks off. And then when you take 2 weeks off, then it's going to be okay to take a month off. And then so basically all you're doing is when you give yourself breaks that are, you know, there's good reasons to give yourself breaks, but most of the time people need breaks because they're anxious about something, they're nervous about something, they're depressed about something, they're not where they want to be. There's some part of the ego that is getting the best of somebody. And I always just tell people, you know, just show up. You know, just make it to class. I understand, you know, I'm a purple belt. I know Byron's a black belt. This is a very, very hard journey. This is a very, you know, the last 5 years of my life have been some of the hardest years of my life. And every day I make the decision to show up. You know, I just keep on showing up to class. I keep on going. I keep on going. I keep on going, no matter how I feel. You know, if I'm feeling like crap, my body's sore, my ribs are broken, I'm just going to keep on showing up. I'm just going to show up to class and watch. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing my part to fulfill the decision that I made to become a jiu-jitsu black belt, to get better on this journey, and always improve myself and the others around me by jiu-jitsu. And so that, I think, is tantamount. You know, that I think is the most important part of this journey, is just don't tell yourself it's okay to take some time off. Understand why. You know, if you're having a surgery, right, then it's okay to take some time off because your doctor says if you take your time off, your wound will open. But if it's just something like, oh, I drank last night, just show up to class. You know, I don't drink, and so I drink once every few months. I basically made the decision to stop drinking because one day I was hungover, I got triangle choked, and I almost passed out within a split second, and it was horrible. It was the most horrible experience of my life. Like the triangle choke had not even been set in yet, and I was already seeing stars. And I said, "Wow, drinking really sucks. Drinking really it takes away from my ability to train jiu-jitsu." And so I kind of made the decision since then to tone it down, not drink it. So now, you know, I probably have a 6-pack of beer throughout the year, right? And so I think the last time I drank, I had 2 cups of scotch on New Year's. And so, you know, it's not that I have anything against drinking, but I just try to make decisions in my life every day that don't hinder my progress in jiu-jitsu.
Cool. Like you said when we started this interview, that you got 3 big focuses in your life, and you try to find balance between those 3, and the rest of the stuff is just kind of on the side. I think that's one way that you've kind of been able to develop your game and where you want to be in jiu-jitsu. What would be a good trait that a new student would have that you would look at them and think that you were glad that they were there, or that they're going to do good in the future?
I think the most important trait is the coachability. Well, that's again from my standpoint. From my standpoint, looking to a student, I think the best thing is coachability, and I'll get back to why I say that in a second. I think another trait that I think is really important if I'm going to put myself on a student level is the ability to have an open mind. I think being open-minded is probably at the forefront of learning jiu-jitsu, is being able to understand that this is a whole new world and that you need to be receptive to every single thing coming your way, because if you're closed off in any way, shape, or form, the mats will not lie. In a fight, the truth will out, and the mats will not lie. So if you're not open-minded about anything, if you're trying to be narrow about the process and try to use things that won't work, then I think the problems will start to happen. So I think having an open mind is probably the best thing from a student standpoint. Now, from a coaching standpoint, I think coachability is the number one thing. And I say that because, for instance, I teach private lessons at my school, and a lot of times my private lessons tend to border on lecture, right? So it's almost like half of the class is technique and half of the class is concept, right? And so what I'm doing is trying to talk people through some of the issues, some of the conceptual issues that they may be having. And so I started teaching like this because a long time ago, one of my students, he came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to take a private lesson. I've been working on this. Let's schedule a time." So we scheduled a time. He says, "I really, really want to work on my submissions from side control." He's a white belt with 2 stripes. "I really want to work on my submissions from side control." So I say, "All right, cool. Show me how you get to side control." After about 3 minutes of watching him try to pass my guard, and I was kind of just letting him pass my guard. He was still having trouble with it. He gets into a position, and I say, "Listen, I would love to teach you submissions from side control. However, I think more importantly, you need to learn how to get into side control. And more importantly beyond that, I think you need to learn how to move." And so I think movement is more important than the actual techniques themselves. And I think that people, I can teach you a million techniques, but if you don't know how to move, you won't be able to execute any of the techniques. And so I think movement is tantamount to success in jiu-jitsu, knowing how to move. And so that kind of got me on this train of teach people concept, teach people how to move, do more movement-related stuff as opposed to just the actual technique. And so the majority of my private lessons are a lot of talk. And so the students that I have that are coachable listen and they apply what I'm talking about in the actual, then you have in the actual sparring session. You have other students that they're like, I think I just wasted my money. Maybe next time I'll take a lesson from somebody else. Those are the ones that I find that they missed the whole point in the first place, and they're still struggling with the same things that they've always been struggling with. Whereas the coachable students are the ones who say, "Oh, you know what? I never thought about side control that way. I never thought about putting my hips low. I never thought about holding, letting go of somebody and just relaxing. That's new to me, right?" And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll talk to people about what makes them anxious. And so I tend to tie a lot of people's jobs. For example, I had a student before he had a shoulder injury. He's a basically big wig up at this advertising firm. And so I tell him, I'm like, all the time, like, your job relates to jiu-jitsu. So when you are doing something for work, how do you, well, I've got outlets trained, I do this, and that's creative. So he basically starts talking about what makes him succeed in jiu-jitsu. It's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. The only difference is you have 15 years of experience in advertising and you have 15 months of experience in jiu-jitsu. It will come, you just have to be patient. And so I'm always trying to find ways that my students are successful in life and then transfer that. I have another student who's he's a doctor. And I tell him, "Hey, listen, when you perform surgery, are you tense? Are you anxious?" "No, I'd imagine that you would get sued for malpractice if you were tense or anxious in surgery." "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have to be very calm. They even do, we actually have to make sure that our hands don't twitch whenever we're idle." And I say, the same thing in jiu-jitsu. You cannot be tense, because when you are tense, you are no longer precise in your movement. You cannot move as well as you used to. So I always try to find things like that that'll help students. So back to the question, I think coachability and just the ability to be open-minded and coached and being receptive to every single thing from both the student standpoint and the coach's standpoint, I think is huge.
Yeah, that's an ongoing trait that will help them throughout their jiu-jitsu career and off the mat as well. Being able to take advice and go with it from somebody who's just trying to help you out and coming from a place of knowing a little bit more about it than you usually.
Right.
Do you have any sponsors you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, a huge shout out to Natural Stacks. So Natural Stacks is an incredible supplement company. They think of themselves, and I think of them as the supplement company. And I say that because I'm very, very careful about what I put into my body. And so, I mean, I have my pig out days, of course, where I'll gorge on some ice cream or some enchiladas. But, for the most part, I typically eat very clean, and I'm always making sure that what I put into my body is quality. And so I've never taken supplements. I've never liked taking supplements. And so I ended up getting a chance to speak with Ben, the owner, the co-founder of Natural Stacks, and basically talk to him about how his materials are sourced and how everything was done, and was really, really impressed by his level of transparency. And so I decided to give his supplements a shot. And so I started taking his supplements, and they were absolutely incredible. As a matter of fact, Siltep is their nootropic, and I've been taking Siltep for a large part of the last 3 weeks trying to get through my thesis. And so it's really, really interesting because I take a supplement in the morning. I take some Siltep in the morning, and I put in about 3 hours of work on my thesis, and all of a sudden it's like I'd only been there for an hour. So it's actually really, really, really productive after taking it. So really, really good stuff. And I have a discount code that I'll be happy to give you all. I'll be emailing when you post actually it's Ricardo P, RICARDO P is a 15% off discount code at naturalstacks.com. So also open door. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to give them my email address, and I'll be happy, or the Jiu-Jitology email address, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about the supplements as well.
Wow, that's really generous of you there, Ricardo, letting our listeners use that coupon code to get 15% off at Natural Stacks. So if you want to take advantage of that, just go to naturalstacks.com and shop for your products right there. It's a great website, and check it out.
Yep, and we'll put it.
Thank you.
Would it be okay? We'll put the coupon code on the show notes here and a link to the Natural Stacks as well. That'd be good.
Yeah, it's totally okay. It's
just
totally
making it easy for everybody.
And Ricardo, if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you, could you tell us your website and how to get a hold of you, the easiest way?
Yeah. So my website is jiu-jitology.com. That's JIUJITOLOGY.com. Believe it or not, I was a spelling bee champ, so I'm actually able to spell that. But jiu-jitology.com is my website. We've got some pretty huge things planned for that website, in addition to a clothing line that we're trying to come out. They're starting to launch early April, so I'll give you guys the information when that gets launched, so you can go ahead and give us a plug.
Yeah.
But the site right now is Jiu-Jitology, JIUJITOLOGY.com.
Perfect, and definitely get a hold of us in April, and we'll let everybody know about your when the clothing line comes out and the new website.
Cool, I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time today. We really appreciate it, Ricardo.
My pleasure. It was fun. I look forward to talking to you all again. Thank you.
All right, yep. Thank you.
Take care, buddy.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Our big thanks to Ricardo from jiu-jitology.com for the double interview there. A lot of great information. I really like the way he runs a classroom. You can tell it's different than most, and he does a lot of experimentation as far as what he's having his students do in between roles, and how he's trying to get them to relax and slow their heart rate down. A lot of cool ideas coming from him, and I do look forward to having him back on the show in the future, and also reading his articles on his website.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have him back, and I can tell you, I talked to him a little bit at length after we were done with the interview, and talked to him about just meditating, and I have been doing that every night, following his directions, and man, I feel a lot less stressed at work. I do feel like it's made a difference, and I kind of like where he was talking about the part where what he'll do between rounds instead of drinking water is he'll just meditate, just get his body back for the next round, and man, I just think that was such good advice that he gave me, and it's already paid dividends, and so thank you, Ricardo.
Yep, that was really cool. After maybe I'll put like a little clip from that at the end of the show. You guys talking there about him giving you basic meditation advice. I should do that.
Oh, so you actually recorded it?
Well, they just left it on.
It's
easier to record than it is to not record. Next week we've got a really motivating interview from a gentleman named Vic Torres. He has multiple sclerosis, and he's training, and he uses his training and his diet to help reduce his symptoms from that. So really cool guy, a lot of good information, and then his personal story is really neat to hear as well. So
so definitely don't forget to tune in next week and hear from Vic.
Gary, we've got some gi patches we're trying to give away here. If you feel so inclined to put one on your gi, there's an easy way to get one.
And how would we go about getting one?
Well, the easiest way to get one would be to write a review on iTunes or in Stitcher or wherever you're listening to the podcast from, and then email us and let us know. Hopefully we earned a 5-star review, or if we really like it when you say something funny about us or about the podcast, or you make up a funny little story about how it's changed your life in a dramatic fashion. Those are always entertaining. But make it kind of fun. Go on there and read the other ones, because there's some really pretty good ones on there already.
We've had some good ones.
Then email us at bjjbrick@gmail.com and let us know that you wrote a review, and I'll get with you, get your address from me, and just send you out a gi patch. Pretty easy.
I like the one, what was it? Never bring a brick to a knife fight?
Something like that. Yeah, that was funny.
Yep, that was good.
Yep. We've been called a few funny names in here, and it's always entertaining to get a funny review from you can tell the people that like you the most are going to write the funniest stuff and say something that's a little bit different. So we enjoy those. If you want to email us, the email address again is bjjbrick@gmail.com, or you could message us on our Facebook page. That's a good way for both of us to get the message. Gary, what should somebody do if they're going to travel through Wichita, Kansas?
First of all, you should let us know, because we are located in Wichita, Kansas. We'd love to train with you, and it would be a blast. We'd love it. We'd have a good time. So let us know if you come on through, and we'll train with you.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that. We always enjoy it. Check us out next week, my friends.
Don't miss it.
And stay sweaty.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Hey, I do want to ask you one question, Ricardo. This is Gary again.
Sure.
Because I'm really going to do the meditation. When you're saying breathe in through your nose, basically till it hurts, do you recommend breathing out back through your nose or out through your mouth?
That's a good question. I don't know how it varies. I think the preferred practice is in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And I don't know why. So I just do that because it's traditionally,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
and I don't question it. I don't question things. They're just going to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
So in through the nose, out through the mouth. I think it has something to do with the effectiveness of oxygen intake and carbon dioxide outtake, for lack of a better word. But I think that's the ideal way to do it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, did you hear me cough?
I know I heard a little bit of noise, but I didn't hear you cough.
Sorry, I was dying for like the last minute. So I threw my headphones off and tried to push my face into a pillow. Oh, man, feels better now.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we're about good here. What would be some good traits, or maybe a good trait that a student would have that you would like? I guess let me re-ask that, because that was terrible. What would be?
No worries.